Conservatives are horrible people. That's not something that I believe. That's something that someone said to me that led to an argument that eventually led to a falling out between us that I thought was rather unfortunate, but probably correct to do for both of us. So this person is LGBT 17846G, whatever. Um, they're very, very far left. They even said to me that they didn't have any friends that were straight and they didn't understand that. And I kind of said, do you think that's healthy? Well, first I said, well, I'm straight. Let's make this clear. But then I said, do you think that that's healthy? I clearly do not think that that's healthy. And they said, why wouldn't it be healthy? And I said, because you're living in a very small bubble of humanity that's not representative of the entire scope of people you're going to have to deal with. And her, their, them, whatever point of view was, well, I shouldn't have to put up with people that don't accept me. That's fucking fantastic. In like a 20-year-old arts student kind of point of view where everything is this perfect utopia that you can shape and society should mold to your every whim and just become great and treat you well, but it's not the world we live in. And unfortunately, you're going to have to interact with people that don't believe the same things that you do. And when I say unfortunately, that's not really even the correct word. I would say it's almost exactly the opposite word. I think this is a good thing. You need to have people around you that believe opposite things to check you so that you don't go too far into one area, which comes to what I'm talking about conservatives. I'm not a conservative. I wouldn't call myself a leftist or a liberal either, but I certainly believe you need both of them. And this is what I said because they, as our argument progressed, it was very vicious and uh, moralizing from their point of view against me for essentially for not condemning people that didn't think the same way that they did. And so as this argument progressed, it was like, so are this? They prefaced it like with this fake, clearly fake um, statement to kind of walk it back a bit, probably just to get a correct answer from me. Like it felt manipulative, but like so I don't mean to be judgmental here, but are are you conservative? And it's like, well, really, it's no business who I voted for, but no, but I have a very integrated and eclectic worldview that encompasses many different positions from many different sides of the political spectrum, and many of them that don't fit. But I have met many conservatives that happen to be wonderful people, and I gave some kind of statement along those lines, and they said, well, conservatives want uh, like their number one goal. I'm paraphrasing and kind of being a little facetious here, but basically what they said was conservatives' number one goal is to kill trans people. And like eye roll, right? Like, no, this is just not the case. They just don't care about those issues as much as you do, for the most part. Most of them are supportive of LGBT people. They just don't want it shoved down their throats 24/7, like I don't either. And they don't think about it all the time because it's not their life. But if you exist as a LGBT person and all your friends are LGBT and all you do is LGBT advocacy work, of course that's all you think about. So you don't realize how radicalized you are. So when someone comes around that's actually uh, just like a classic liberal, let alone a centrist or a right wing person, you're going to think that they're an extremist on the other side, and that's not the case. You are the extremist. And this is kind of where our conversation went. And eventually it came down to them saying, like, well, if do you have any conservative friends? And I said, yes, absolutely. And they said, I don't know if I can be your friend. And I just laughed. And I said, like, where do you think this goes? Like, you don't be friends with me, who's not a conservative, for having friends that are conservative. Well, what happens if you have a friend that's not conservative that won't join your team by throwing me away because I have a friend? You see this slippery slope? Like I don't I knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy who was conservative, so can't know any of them. It's fucking pathological, and people like this are existing in incredible numbers because they're allowed to, because they're able to, because they're manufactured by things like the internet and all these subcultures that you get that now have enough people, whereas in the past you would have just been considered an individual identity, or there just weren't enough people to join up forces and come up with an ideology. Now there is, because you find the people from all over the globe. So the 18 of you that exist can all mobilize and radicalize on Twitter and convince everyone that you're a bigger force than you actually are. But then what happens is that 18 becomes 17 because you realize that the 18th person isn't actually uh, part of your team because they don't believe in one thing, or because they have one friend who has one friend who has one friend who's conservative, or whatever it may be. And so, in that sense, it should be self-defeating. These groups should eventually become so small that they fizzle out, but they don't. They just subdivide into factions that fight each other. So everyone's in a fight. There is nobody that gets along. That's what's happening right now. That's why the internet is a toxic place. That's why young people are growing up in the absolute worst environment ever. But they're also the perpetrators. It's not necessarily their fault, but it's their responsibility. It's our responsibility in the older generations. I mean, I can't believe I feel like that. I can't believe I'm 30 years old and there's such a divide between me and 20-year-olds, but there is. If you think this way, if all your friends think the same way, you have a problem and you need to fix this. If you cannot stand having friends that have not just minor political and worldview differences, but major ones, I think you have a problem. And I think it's going to cause you severe issues with social functioning and just bringing shit into the world that other people don't need. Do yourself and other people a favor and learn how to integrate. Learn how to hold two ideas in your mind at one time. Like, I don't agree with you, but I respect you. But yeah, that person was a total cunt, and I'm glad they're gone.